Okay. Hello.
Hey, Josh.
How you going?
Very well. How are you today?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Nice.
I've just
So,
been teaching some yoga classes. I've been teaching Mysore style yoga via Zoom, as we're all doing everything via Zoom these days.
and how are you
Yeah.
finding that?
It's really, really good. It's a very sufficient stopgap measure. A good thing to have in place of physical classes while we have to reduce contact. And it's got some charming characteristics that may well mean that we retain it as an option for people. This is a good way to start talking about the topic of the talk, which is Mysore style yoga and Ashtanga yoga, because people tend to be really, really unfamiliar with what it is, and it does require a bit of explaining for most people to get what actually happens in this style of class. This is actually the reason why I started writing the book that I've written, because I found myself having taken over an Ashtanga studio, the one that I learned yoga at a couple of years ago. I found myself sort of meeting people in the street, people that I know and that I used to teach gym yoga to and conventional Western yoga classes to. And I found myself having surprisingly long conversations in order to get the vital information across about what goes on in these classes. So yeah, I thought, I better write this down. I can give everyone a book instead of having awkward half-an-hour-long conversations.
So, how would you describe Mysore and Ashtanga being different to most other yogas that people know of? Like the general public know a certain amount about yoga, but how would you just...
Yeah, well, you've hit on probably the two most important sort of key words there. It's Ashtanga and Mysore style. So, Ashtanga refers to a particular sequence of poses where you start with the sun salutations, the Surya Namaskar, the arms up, arms down, breathing, up dog, down dog kind of thing. And then Ashtanga proposes or prescribes a series of poses that you do a portion of every time you practice. Over the years of your practice, over many, many years of practice, that portion that you do sort of moves up into more and more advanced poses. So it's something that keeps you challenged at all times. So many people, myself included, when I started doing sort of power yoga, I was really, really going for it and going at it. And I was pretty fit already. I was doing a lot of other fitness activities and I was pretty flexible already. And so I had a great time, but I did find myself sort of plateauing after about a year. I felt the benefit reduce in that I was now able to do the poses fairly well without much concentration. Initially when I started doing yoga, I found that it forced me to concentrate. And suddenly it made sense why people do this athletic yoga as a mindfulness practice, because when you're trying to balance and not fall over in a room full of people, you need to concentrate. So it really forces that issue. And then that training every day that you do for an hour or so, I just found it spilling over into my regular life. Suddenly I was able to concentrate more. When something would happen at work that really required my attention, I was able to give it in a way that was noticeably more than before I was doing yoga. But as I was saying, this one size fits all class model where you do a class and it's called power yoga and it goes for 60 or 75 minutes. And while the teacher will give variations and options for certain poses to suit people who want to take it easy or want to go a bit stronger, there's still a fairly big limit as to how much variance there can be in a class. A 60-year-old person that's never done yoga before can't do a power yoga class, and someone that's really, really athletic and really going for it will find a power yoga class eventually a little bit boring potentially. And so this is why they often will increase the heat. So they'll impose artificial heat in order to soften the body up, but also to provide extra challenge. If you can balance on your hands while you're twisting around well, and try and do it in 40-degree heat, it's definitely a challenge. The Ashtanga method is a little more bespoke. So a beginner does the beginner postures until they find them so easy that they're flowing through them very, very effortlessly, and their breath is big and expansive, and they may even show signs of being not challenged anymore. And so then the teacher will spot that and whisper in their ear and get them to do something more difficult, and they'll experience nothing but gratitude as a result of that. Thank you for the challenge.
Yes, I like the words you've chosen.
Yes. And so then, if you haven't done Mysore style yoga, you may be wondering, how does that work then? This is what Mysore style yoga is. Mysore, the word, Mysore, it's an unusual word, but it's an Indian word. It's a city in India, in South India, the city of Mysore. And in that city, about 100 years ago, there was an awful lot. 100 years ago, and the previous 100 years as well, there was an awful lot of yoga going on, and it's where the royalty that managed the city were very, very progressive. They did a lot of good things. They were egalitarian, and they valued the arts and education for all, this kind of thing. They were trying to break down a lot of class barriers as well. And so they attracted a few yogis, and one of them, Krishnamacharya, he really is like the father of what we consider to be yoga in the West. And he came and after a lot of study in the Himalayan mountains, he came and he actually healed some of the royal family. He did some fancy stuff there. Prescribed them some yoga techniques and made them feel better. So that was obviously a good idea. And they appointed him as the royal yoga teacher. They gave him a room in the palace, and he started teaching the adults one-on-one or in small groups, and started teaching the youth in big classes. In those classes, the Mysore style of teaching yoga developed. So, and in particular in the classes where there are a lot of adults, adults come in all shapes and sizes and all kinds of injury levels and capacity levels. So you have no choice really, especially if you've got an eye for risk management and true health. You really need to have individual conversations with people. It's only a very surface level of yoga can be taught where everyone's doing the same thing at the same time. And anyone with a bit of anatomical knowledge too will understand that there are different bone structures in human beings, and one bit of advice and guidance for one person may be the incorrect advice for the other person. So when you're teaching these more commonplace lead classes in the West, it really restricts what you can say in a class. You can't say to someone, rotate your thigh this way, because it might be the wrong advice for some people. So in a Mysore style class, the students gradually learn a sequence of poses by themselves. What I mean there is the teacher teaches them the sequence of poses. Every time they come in, the teacher says, okay, what I'd like you to do is this and this, right? And he'll watch them do it. He'll give them a precise guidance, and he'll get them to do it a few times, and then he'll come back over and go, okay, that was good. Let's do another couple of poses, and it's this one and this one. And again, the same process will occur. And this will be occurring in a class where there's more than just one person. There's maybe 10 people, maybe 20 people, or 30. And so they're all at various levels of experience. Many of them will have already memorized what their poses are. So they'll be fairly self-sufficient and fairly intimidating for new people. This is a common experience. If you walk into a yoga class and there's already people there doing yoga by themselves, seemingly without any need for a teacher's help, very, very, very intimidating, especially if you don't know anything at all.
Do you find that maybe part of the charm of it, though, is that they can aspire and they look towards those people and go, I'm very humbled because I don't know as much as I thought I knew.
Yeah.
But they're doing that, and that's pretty cool. I want to, commit to this process to get there.
Especially when some of those people you can sort of tell they're middle-aged or they've got kids, this kind of thing. That they're doing these amazing things. You know? Yeah, inspiration for sure. And it is one of those initial ego battles, I guess, too, is you know, being willing to be a beginner. If you know you're a beginner, well, no, you're a beginner. It's okay. Put your mat down.
You've already been to lots of yoga classes, but then realise that feeling, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. I've been in a class for a long time, but I actually don't know as well as I thought I did.
That is precisely in my experience, that's the demographic that have the hardest time with it.
Yeah.
A beginner, a true beginner, especially in Australia, an Aussie who's never done yoga before, but his doctor said, you better start doing some yoga, mate. He will stroll into the yoga studio with his shoes on, and go, oh, g'day, mate. You just want to do yoga? And there'll be people doing their silent, you know, austere practice, and this guy will just walk in and go, how you going, mate? You know.
Yeah.
These guys have the best time, and honestly, we get a lot of middle-aged men come in to this studio. You know.
Yeah.
It does tend to be a less boisterous, verbal, noisy kind of class. There's a bit less sort of rah-rah cheerleading going on. There's more one-on-one conversations. So perhaps middle-aged dads enjoy a bit of peace and quiet before they go home after work.
No one's interrupting them. That's good.
Yeah, so we embrace being a beginner. It encourages you just to be okay with being a beginner and being amongst people who are more experienced and, you know, like you said, derive a bit of inspiration from it and, aspire.
So now we know a bit more about Mysore and Ashtanga. What's this book that you referred to earlier? Tell us about how this process has been evolving for you.
So because of how useful this style of yoga is, you know, I really believe that if people if more people saw how it functions, then it would easily grow to be the normal style of yoga. It is the normal style of yoga, in fact. The last
if you ask Josh.
If you ask history, it is.
Yes, history.
But if you look at the last 30 or 40 years, no, it's not the normal style of yoga, but every other era in humanity, other than the last few decades, it's the normal style of yoga. A bunch of people in a room with a teacher walking around just like a classroom, just like a school. You know, when the teacher at school, in primary school, as I recall primary school, you know, we would give you some task to do after giving some instruction. Would say, okay, now you have to go and do these jobs, and the teacher would walk around and look over the shoulder of the students and help them out or pick up their mistakes. That's what this kind of studio class is. It's a class and a school as opposed to a fitness routine or a studio, I guess you could say. So writing this book, you know, that's in the back of my mind. What I found though is, I mean, I've got such a strong you know, spiritual and metaphysical kind of bent. I have since I was a little kid. It's very hard for me to resist talking about this kind of thing. When I quit my IT profession 6 or 7 years ago, it was such a relief for me. I was able to read more books, you know, and they're all ancient books, you know, Upanishads, all these, you know, sort of Sanskrit translations.
In Sanskrit, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it so much, you know. Once you get more used to the language of Sanskrit, you can be less dependent on the English translations and commentaries. So you can start to derive your own meaning from these strange phrases. Yeah, so I couldn't resist anymore. I had to start peppering that kind of information into the book as well. I'd intended to sort of save people from my views and keep it for a second book that would not sell any copies, but you know, it has to happen.
Maybe everyone's ready. Maybe everyone's ready for this now.
But you know, at the start too, I thought I remember thinking very, very firmly, no, it would be utterly arrogant for me to do so as well. The Upanishads have already been written. They're there. It's great. Just read
Yeah.
that. There's nothing else required. There's no need for modern author after modern author to put their own personal spin on things and to try to cover what's already been covered. But I did come to, I guess I started to be exposed to speakers and authors here and there who just did such a great job of of presenting certain ideas using modern situations and mentalities that I was so impressed. I thought, wow, that's actually helped me. That's actually benefited me on top of the Sanskrit text information. And so then I could see that there is a value in modern authorship. And then I thought, well, maybe I can contribute to that. Because I do it in person a fair bit. And I know that I have a pretty good effect on people when I'm teaching in person. And I've always loved writing. So there we go.
I think there's a hunger for it. I mean, especially if your natural conversation ends up going there and people are,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. And so the other quirk about the Ashtanga yoga system is that, there's a chant that's done at the start of the class, which is just a charming little 20-odd line chant. And the chant itself is largely taken from a particular Sanskrit text called Yoga Taravali. And that text is quite short, 29 lines, and it really does summarize a vast amount of esoteric, mystical, and traditional hatha yoga. So it's a really, really nice short one. And the only translations that are available I found a little bit old, a little bit staid, using the same kind of descriptions and metaphors, and I found them not to really land with as much modern day real world relevance as I thought they could. And so I thought, all right, well, why don't I seeing as though it's the heart and soul of the Ashtanga, the popular Ashtanga yoga method, I thought, why don't I do a new commentary on that?
Yes.
And so,
that's exciting. Cool.
Really, really good fun. And I studied some Sanskrit in Mysore a few years ago, and more recently did some at the Australian National University, and it's a really, really fun process doing this.
Yeah.
It's too easy for us to look at the old text and to treat them as poetry or historical remnants, this kind of thing. The idea is to use it, and we are using the physical aspect of yoga. We are definitely doing that. We're cultivating a really healthy body, healthy immune system, clearing through the channels of the body. And we are doing the mental work as well. We are doing the energetic and the really, really mystical work as well. We're just not aware that we're doing it. It's all happening in the background. But I think what you were saying a moment ago is right. I think there's a hunger for it. So it's happening. It's happening and it's unfolding, and people's consciousness is changing. And there are some resources like this text that help people navigate it. It's a little bit of a map. This sort of thing will happen. This sort of thing will happen. Yeah. Paint a picture and give. Over the years, it can be heartbreaking sometimes too. If you're isolated as a spiritual practitioner and you're having experiences, it can be really hard. You might be living in a country town where no one else is having it. And so, the internet obviously has broadened our ability to share information and to find communities. And I feel like this particular style of yoga accelerates the blossoming of the mental and spiritual effects because it's done in silence, relatively speaking. Because it's such an inward journey, you can basically do it with your eyes closed. With enough practice, you can be doing the asanas, the physical yoga stuff, with your eyes closed. You're doing it, you just, you jump straight out of bed and start doing it, basically. You can be almost in a dream state still while you're doing it. It's a lovely experience to have. So there's nothing but an acceleration on the cards for humanity as I see it, and I'd love to contribute to that. Both in person in teaching the yoga physically, but by creating a more contemporary commentary and translation of this sort of information that's been around for so many thousands of years.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it would be a disservice to all the people that are hungry for this information if we weren't. If you have you've got the tools, which is you write beautifully, and you've don't mind the whippersnip in the background, but you use your words beautifully, and you have the knowledge. I mean, of course, you could sit there and not share that and live in a blissful state. But there are people hungry for this, and
Thank you.
Like you said, they often feel isolated in this journey, because it can be quite isolating when you are different to everybody else around you. But there are a lot more people than what we maybe first realized on this journey, now that we're actually showing our faces and saying, well, this is what I do and what I believe in, and this is the true me, not what everyone else wants to think I am.
That's truly it, isn't it? The more people that do it, the more emboldened we all become.
That's exciting.
Look, anyone that's taught yoga too ought to have had the pretty clear experience that teaching is just as elating and fun and helpful in your life as practicing. I used to say when I started teaching yoga, I used to say it's the biggest scam in the world. It's amazing, and you're getting the same benefit as they're getting, and you get paid for it sometimes. It's not work; it's pure enjoyment. Helping people on the same journey you're on, and it's just a mutual positive feedback loop. I used to walk out of a gym having taught a class, and the feeling was exactly the same as if I had just done a class. Amazing.
It's great. So what else about your book? You ended up writing it in, I know this bit of background knowledge, you ended up writing it in India, which is quite extraordinary. Wasn't planned that way.
So I've just spent 3 months in India, and that's during the time of all these lockdowns that occurred. So I had a great time. Look, I was utterly detached from most of what was happening in the world. I was up in the mountains in North India, and just getting messages from people here and there. So I had a nice opportunity to finish off the last couple of chapters. I guess the last thing I'd say on this whole topic is that what we're doing is we're cultivating. Many metaphors can be used. Let's use the metaphor of a garden. We're cultivating a garden of our moods, our intentions. Things that exist in consciousness that are beyond sentences and paragraphs and words. So there are states, and there are sort of proto-linguistic objects. There are concepts. All these, it's hard to describe sometimes. Visions, images, memories, these things that occur in consciousness that are more abstract and more nebulous and ethereal than straight up dialogue. Sometimes you might find yourself walking down the street and you are actually talking to yourself, right? Like, you're not speaking necessarily out loud, but there's a full-on conversation going on in your head. And if you were to speak it out loud and someone heard it, they would think you're probably a bit batty,
Depending on the conversation, yeah.
Like actually having a to and fro dialogue with yourself, and that's kind of crazy. But it's so commonplace, yoga defines that as just the most coarse and unsubtle, unrefined mode of mental behavior. And so the idea is to realize that, and to realize the step up from that, the step up into a more subtle and abstract and more useful and enjoyable form of mental activity. Now, I don't know whether you would call it thought. To me, thought implies talking. this other level, the causal level of imagery, relationships, geometries, moods, emotions, or higher level emotions like things like love and things that are a bit more gripping in the heart. These kinds of movements, the idea is that you can live in that world. You can live in a world where you feel ideas and feelings and don't automatically drop down into talking about them in your head. Usually what happens is someone will have a feeling or a thought or an idea or a vision or a memory come, and it comes in a second. Boom, there it is. And so rapidly afterwards, in their head, they will start talking about it. Oh yeah, that is a good idea. I wonder if they would like that. Blah, 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 blah. You know, and then a few minutes later, maybe another impression will come. Bam, straight up. And then they'll start talking about that one in their head. The idea is if you break the habit of talking to yourself about whatever's just happened in your head, then you will naturally exist in this more pleasant plane of consciousness, and you will float through ideas, relationships, geometrical forms. You know, it starts to move into the sort of ecstatic experiences that the mystics and the trippers have. You know, will experience life in a very, very different way, in a way that is using your natural, you know, hormones, neurotransmitters. You will naturally experience a great deal of joy, but also you'll be more effective in your life as well. The idea is that you want to do things in this project we call a human life, and we want to do the ones that are true to us, that excite us, that genuinely interest us. We want to do them in a way that feels good, that feels like a cascade, a flow, that involves other people, and bounces ideas off other people, and that can seem to happen rapidly, and that can seem to happen with wide expanses of relaxation as well. All these lovely states of being. It is the natural state. It might not be the normal state at the moment, but it is the natural state of a conscious animal on this planet.
Yeah, I think. Everyone's been, sorry to interrupt, but you know, as you know, everyone's been coming from fear for so long. But if we can go back to our natural state, and live that lifestyle, have more people living that, surrounded by them. It's
this is exactly it, and the coronavirus thing is just a really big example of how we can fairly swiftly cut off the routine, you know, the monkey mind verbal dialogue and the routine that's attached to a more coarse level of reality or mode of operation. And when we do cut it off, what will be revealed is the garden. You know? So what will be revealed is the kinds of ideas and tendencies that we have cultivated. So tendency then moves into the word karma. Everyone knows the word karma. Karma, just as a quick aside, is not about punishment. It's not about like keeping a list of all your mistakes and then punishing you for them. Karma simply means tendency. So we have this garden of tendencies, you know. So yeah, so we can cultivate them, and it does take a little bit of effort sometimes. But once we realize the benefit, we can quickly continue to cultivate it in a positive direction. So we want to cultivate compassion. You know, the Buddhist practices and meditations on compassion. We want to cultivate altruism. We want to cultivate the idea of following what excites you and what genuinely interests you. Follow all these ideas, and we want to lead to not deny the existence of the negative ones, but we want to be so emboldened in the plants that we desire to grow that the weeds get smaller and smaller and get crowded out until they're just a little memory, maybe a little seed in the background, seed of karma that's not nourished anymore by our activities. The idea being then that when you have external events like a calamity, you know, everyone's had that experience of someone dying in their life, this kind of thing, you know, where suddenly everything's on hold, all of your routines on hold, and what is exposed is your natural tendencies, your higher level tendencies.
Yeah.
Yoga is very big on this sort of thing, is actually deliberately inducing a state of maybe shock, maybe not quite shock, but like a relatively rapid detachment, momentary detachment from the routine, so that you get to zoom back up into that garden and to see what your true self, how your true self is looking.
Yeah, and the more you do it and the more you practice it, the easier it gets, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what you naturally are drawn to, because that's
it.
what you've been practicing.
That's it.
Which is such a simple, put it simply, that's,
yeah.
Of course it makes sense, but for some reason we get caught up. Some people get caught up along the way and make it more complicated than it needs to be.
We complicate it because we write it down. This is it. Everyone, all the folks say the same thing. Once you attempt to write it down, either to record it for yourself or to share it with someone else, that's actually a problem. Writing it down forces you to come down to sentences again.
No more journaling. No more bringing up the past.
Well, look, it's just something that's got to be managed, and we've got to make sure that we address a balance. If we feel like we're talking more than we need to, and we're not able to get up into the garden kind of nebulous state as often as we want, then prioritize that for a while. And a huge thing here is trusting that even when a revelation comes and you really want to write it down so you don't forget it, or you really want to share it, trust that it's there inside you. It's always been there inside you, and it's there, and you don't need to necessarily stop and start talking about it, either on paper or in your head.
Or tell everyone.
You can even let it sort of float away again, knowing that it's there. It'll come back. You will come back to it when you need it.
I have had that experience quite a number of times.
There's spontaneous living. Spontaneous. No need to hoard any information. No need to secure things. No fear of loss. Knowledge that everything is there. Everything is abundant. We have everything we need. It's just a matter of finding it. And the way to find it is to simply do the thing that interests you. Do the thing that naturally lights you up, and that's your path. That's your path for that moment, for that day, to do that thing.
Yes, I agree.
So
as you like through Ashtanga and through going to the studio, you have shown me that path as well, which has been a huge. How would you put it? There's been a big shift in my life, which has been great through daily practice. And
and this is I guess another precept they implore you to, in the same way that when you're on a plane, put your own oxygen mask on first and then help the others, by following that individual path, you will naturally exude it without thinking that you're doing it. You're walking down the street and you're beaming photons out, and you're influencing people's lives whether you think you are or not.
The amount of people that have said, "Hi, how are you?" And I mean, we're assuming that we actually know each other. We don't know each other, but I'm like, "I'm really great. How are you?" We just keep on going, and I'm like, "Oh, that was really cool."
We're creating heaven on earth. This is what you would want, right? If you want to upgrade earth to heaven, this is the sort of thing you want to happen, isn't it?
This is the beginning. Well, not the beginning. We're on the part. We're amongst it.
Yeah.
So you finished writing the book, and what's next?
What's next is maybe another 6 months of fussing over it.
Integrating it, right?
Look, I've only ever written short things before, and relatively few long things. This is, I think, about 65,000 words, and if anyone's ever written before, you write something, and then maybe a few weeks later you look at it again and you go, "My God, who even wrote this? Like, it's terrible." What does it even mean?
Or the other way around, you read it and you go, "Did I write that? That's amazing. Can I?" Yeah.
I'm happy to say that's happened. It's been about 9 months on this project, and the material that was written in the first part is awkward and stilted, but I'm happy to say that the more recent material, I smile and I think that exact thing. Oh, who wrote this? And it's really nice, and it actually uplifts me as well. It's lovely.
Yeah. No, it's
So
exciting.
I'll be editing and making it a bit more professional, and making sure that I cover the cross pollination of the various yoga texts. I really want to make sure that it gives people some breadcrumbs to follow if they want to go into certain topics and certain authors or certain rishis that wrote these old things. I want to make sure that everyone's got lots of exciting rabbit holes to go down. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's exciting. So maybe in the next 3 or 6 months we'll be published. It'll be great.
We're all very excited.
Yeah,
We're glad to have you back in Australia, because there was a moment there we were wondering if you weren't going to come home, and we'd find you in a gully in a hut meditating.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I feel pretty keen for that. I'm pretty bloody keen for that. Within 2 days of getting back, I bought a car that I can sleep in so that I can go off into the wilderness around here. So we better catch up soon, eh?
Yeah, I think we better. Definitely. And so is there anything else you wanted to cover, or anything else comes to mind?
Look, I would just say that bringing it back to the physical, if you want to do yoga at your home, do yoga at your home. At some point, in some way, we all end up becoming our own teacher. So I think one of the best things that anyone can do is spend 5 minutes at home. No need to even have a yoga mat. Just be on the floor, roll around a bit, sit down, roll backwards and forwards a few times, do a few things, make a few things up that you might have picked up along the way that seem like they might be yoga-y, and do those.
Yeah, well, it's that, isn't it?
It's similar to the idea that people benefit so much from walking barefoot every day for a few minutes. It's the same kind of thing. Get on the floor, roll around like a child, and stretch out. Do a few things like this. One of the best things people can do. You need to lower the barriers to entry as far as having a sense of authority and ownership of your own body and your own yoga practice. Yeah.
Wonderful. That sounds good. Well, thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you, Kate. This is really fun.
Wasn't as we planned, but this has been good.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being my first interviewer.
I know. Woohoo! That's good. You're the first person I've interviewed too, so there you go.
There you go.
Wasn't planning on that either.
We'll touch base. We'll bookmark it and see what's happened in a year. We'll see how many interviews we've both had in a year.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, we'll probably end this now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem at all. Anytime.
Okay, bye, Josh.
Yeah.